welcome to a watercolor tutorial, and today we're going to be painting this portrait right here. It's very beginner friendly. It's a lot of fun to do. So the only thing that I can suggest is if you use masking fluid on the moon, don't make the same mistake that I did. So for this painting, I actually warmed it up too much with my dryer and it started to tear the page a little bit, which for this one, it didn't bother me too much because it gave it a really nice effect. The moon has texture, so it didn't bother me. But future note, make sure that if you're using masking fluid, let it cool down before you take it off. Otherwise, you might tear your page. But this was very beginner friendly. It was a lot of fun. Let's get started. Let's go over our supplies. So right here, I have my 2 water cups. I have one for warm, one for cool water. I have here my dryer. I got this on Amazon, and I'm able to dry my layers very quickly. I have my tapping cloth where I tap excess water on here handy. I also have my Winsor Newton watercolor palette. You'll see all of these colors that I use inside your ebook that's emailed to you. I use these brushes a lot. This is my oval mop, and I usually just use this to cover large surfaces with water. And then I have this oval brush as well that I like to use when I'm painting certain flowers. I use masking fluid a lot. This acts as a barrier between the page and the layer that you want to paint over top. You let it dry, take off the masking fluid, and what is underneath is paper. So this is really good, but always make sure that you have an old brush handy because this does get very goopy. So always have an old brush so you don't destroy a nice brush. I have right here my bleed proof white. This is my Dr. Martens. I use it all the time. It's a very pigmented white. It's awesome. These are the brushes that I use all the time. I love this particular brush because the bristles are very soft and I can get a very nice pointed tip so I can get lots of detail. So the size I use a lot is size 8, 12, and 4, and this is a silver black velvet brush. I also recommend having masking tape. Any painter's tape from the dollar store works perfectly fine. I like to paint my paintings down. I like when it leaves a border, and it's really nice if you have an extra cardboard sheet handy that you can move your projects around and not be tied down to your desk. You'll also see I'm a messy painter, so this has definitely helped contain some of the mess on my desk. Okay, so the first thing that I did was I applied masking fluid, and it's already dry, so I'm ready to get started. So if you haven't already, apply some masking fluid. If you don't have masking fluid, you can just try really carefully to go around the outside of it. It'll just make your life a little bit easier if you apply masking fluid because you can paint over top. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some clear water to my background, and I'm using my biggest size brush, my size 12. That way I can cover a larger area. And I am going to be doing the wet on wet technique. The wet on wet technique is when you have a wet surface and then you paint on top of it with another wet surface. All right, there we go. That should be pretty good. Okay, so in here, I'm gonna mix up my color, and I'm gonna want around my moon to be the lightest part of my sky. So you'll see here, I'm just going around and I'm doing some really loose swirls. I'm leaving a little bit of white space, and the more I come out, the darker my sky is going to be. And I'm going in a circular motion like this. I'm mixing up indigo with a little bit of a nice sky blue. And because this is wet, I'm going to be able to have really nice blends within my first layer, sorry. And then working my way to a darker shade as I'm going out. And you're also going to see here, I am not touching my mountain range. Okay, I can be a little bit more aggressive here and adding more paint. There we go. For a second there, I was just going a little bit too conservative here. I can even pull some of that into my middle. I'm going to add a little bit more indigo to the edges here. And you'll see again, because it is already wet, I'm gonna have some nice blends and bleeds in between these different shades of blue that I have. Okay, so I'm gonna dry this so I can move on to my mountain area. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to dry this before I paint over here, because of that wet on wet. So if I started painting a darker mountain color right here, everything's gonna bleed into the sky and kind of ruin what we just created there. So I didn't want to do that. So I have gone ahead and dried my sky. So I'm just mixing in a little bit of green into that sky color that I have, because I want to stay pretty similar to the color up top, but I also want there to be a little bit of a different color to it. So I'm going to come in now and I'm going to apply that first layer of mountain right here. And while it's wet, again, we're going to take advantage of that wet on wet technique. I'm going to just touch the very tops of my mountain, just like that. I'm going to add just a hair of black into this indigo color, so the tops of the mountain are just a little bit darker. And if you want to have a really nice highlight as well, you can actually just go in and you can just scoop up some of it as well. And I'm going to dry this. Okay, I'm going to mix a little bit more green into this color that I have. I want it to be different, a little bit different than this mountain, and I am going to put my first layer down. Oh, it's a little bit too green. Add a little bit more indigo to that. There we go. I still don't love it. I'm gonna add more indigo to it. I think it's the blues. I think I just really like blue colors. And then I am going to paint like this. I'm gonna come in with a darker greenish, indigo-ish color. And I'm going to tap towards the very top again, give it a nice shadow at the top of my mountain. Remembering that I can just go in with a damp brush and scoop up to give some of this part a little bit of a nice highlight. I feel like the top just isn't dark enough for my liking. I'm going to add a little bit more black. See if that does the trick. And it does. So I'm just going to tap around the top. And I'm going to dry it. So I'm going to come in now with my Blue Proof White, and I'm going to just touch the tops of my mountains to kind of give it a look of snow. There we got some snow in the mountains. So the only thing with this bleed proof white is sometimes you just need to do a couple layers before you get like a really nice bright and pigmented white, which is what I'm doing right here. And then I'm going to come over top just a little bit on this mountain, because sometimes all of the mountains just aren't covered with snow, right? And I actually really like how the top of this mountain looks. I'm going to dry this part. So that I can come in with white and see how it just sits on top just that much more. And I'm just blobbing, literally just blobbing around, no real technique to it. But what I'm going to do is I am going to get a lot of pigment here on my brush, and I am going to flick it to have there be some effects of snow. This part can be kind of messy. I'm not a fan of. Get some good flicks going. Okay, so I'm gonna completely dry this and then we'll move on to the moon. So I'm gonna dry this. Okay, so the trick to the masking fluid is everything has to be completely dry. Otherwise, you run the risk of ruining your piece because it will smudge, it will tear. It's just not pretty. How ironic in this moment, as I'm talking about all the things that could go wrong with masking fluid, something goes wrong. So after I had a panic attack, because I did not want to do this painting again, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to roll with the punches here. What I did wrong was with my masking fluid, I was going over with a really dry heater and it melted the masking fluid. So if you're using a dryer, make sure that you let your masking fluid cool back down. Otherwise, you'll have an incident with what happened here and you're going to end up melting it and ripping your page. So I decided that, you know what, this particular area, it's the moon, it'll have a cool effect. So I decided to keep rolling with it. So hopefully you'll have a nice, fresh sheet with the sketches provided. So moving on, as I said, I decided I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna have some textured moon, everything's gonna be fine. So I mixed in a little bit of yellow with a little bit of brown and I smoothed it out with just water touching the edges. So you'll see if I have any harsh lines, I blend it out with just water and then I mix a little bit of gray into that yellow while it's still wet and I smooth that out and around the edges where my ink marks are, even around in the middle of it, spreading it out with just water so we have a nice shadow going around my moon just to give a nice shadow effect and kind of break up that yellow because we don't want the moon with too much of a yellow tone to it. And then we can dry the moon. So now we're going to do the wet on dry technique, which is applying wet paint to dry paper. So you'll see here I added a little bit of black while that first layer was dry, and now I'm just blending that out with water. And I'm going to go over different areas, trying to blend out my ink marks, my sketches provided. Come in and I'm just going to freehand some deer, and I went with the black. And I'm going to do the body. You'll hopefully still have your outline. I'm working a little. And I'm going to dry it. Hold on. This is bleeding a bit. Okay, there we go. I just told myself in my head, the rip part of my painting, I'll just add to texture of the moon. And no one but you and I will know that mine ripped. Okay. And then I'm going to come over here. And I'm going to start to freehand. And let's see how this looks. Okay, first one, not horrible. Let's see how this one goes. I can still kind of see the outline on this one actually. feel like I'm holding my breath a little here. So I just cut forward to when I'm painting my slate. I didn't realize when recording that my big old head was cutting off what I was doing. I was too much in the zone. So this will be a lot easier for you than it probably was for me, just because I could not really see much of what I was painting. But like I said before, I decided to go ahead and paint this because I felt like I could salvage what I had. It would just give a really cool texture on the moon. And I might just do like a little rain right here. Okay, I'm gonna do one more layer on this sled. Okay. And since I'm able to kind of salvage it a little bit, I'm gonna come in and curve out this moon just a hair. I'm also going to add a third layer onto my moon as well. I felt like I was just a little bit too conservative. So after I fix this line, I'm going to come in with a little bit more of a wash of a gray and add gray to different spots on my moon and really just make it pop and give it some nice life and texture to it. I can even add a bit of this color out of the moon. Where's that blue? Blending out the color. Okay. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I just saved that there. Okay. So this is my really easy watercolor painting. I guess be careful with your masking fluid and don't give up because it might actually turn out pretty good. Happy painting!